Welcome to the virtual lunch. Today is Friday, April 23rd, 2021, and this is virtual lunch number 289. Our guest today is Ellen Blanchard, the Director of Discovery and Information Governance at T-Mobile, and this is part of our April series on meaningful metrics, thanks to our friends at Integrion. Hi, Ellen. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I'm excited for this conversation. So, Ellen, tell us about your background and the work that you do at T-Mobile.
So I head up discovery and information governance at T-Mobile. I've been here about 6 years, and I have seen the team go from just me to now a team of 5 people that report up to me that handle basically all of the discovery and records management and information governance for T-Mobile. The information governance is relatively new. I've always pushed into that area because it has such a downstream impact on litigation and discovery, but we're trying to be a lot more proactive about where the data is stored, how long we're storing it, making sure we understand the legal ramifications of that. My mission when I came on board 6 years ago was to start really being very proactive about discovery and thinking through strategically, how is it we're going to approach the discovery, making sure that we're being consistent across cases, that we're really thinking through how do we protect the company from the discovery risks. And then before that, I spent 14 years in big law doing securities and antitrust litigation with Boyce Schiller and Flexner. So I've kind of seen it from all sides, which I think helps me have a great perspective on how do we manage discovery internally at T-Mobile. In some ways, it's so hard to, in my world, separate the changes from the pandemic as well as the changes from the merger. After 2 years, officially closed the merger April 1st last year. So we're just past our 1-year anniversary. And I went from being in an office where the majority of our team, so I sit within litigation, and all of us, with the exception of a couple people, were in Seattle and in the office all the time. And then we obviously went remote. We thought it was going to be a short period of time. But in there, I added 3 new people to my team, and 2 of whom I have never met in person. We had already moved to, for the most part, a process where most of our collections were already remote. We were doing collection calls over Skype, now over WebEx, and we had the process in place to do a lot of collections behind the scenes. But what we have seen in the pandemic is just a staggering increase in the use of other collaboration tools. We have almost 3 million Slack messages created every day. And it's something where we had never collected from Slack in the past. And so that's been a change as well. I hope that at least some kind of hybrid model of being in the office some days and working from home some days will continue, just because I think that there's a value to not having the stress of getting up and putting on your suit and being in the office and being on, right? Because anybody could stop by at any point versus being at home and whatever the situation is. Most days until recently, I shared an office with my son. So there were certainly distractions, but you just kind of made it work. And there was a lot of time at home where I could just focus, and I didn't have the commute, and I didn't have the, oh, I've got to race out of here. Good or bad, I think we will see the continued use of the collaboration tools going forward. Slack's not going away. There's other collaboration tools that are whiteboarding tools like Mira, and all of those things that are here. People recognize that you can do it remotely and that it provides that flexibility, and it provides the flexibility for the families who need to be able to run out to do things, and we can still be successful and do everything we need to do, even if we're trying to balance these things. Early on in the pandemic, my daughter had a paper mache project and I was helping her with it. So we had like an hour in between meetings and her school classes. And so we started working on it, and I had to get on a team call. We had just added the Sprint folks, and my litigation team went from 20 to 43. I still haven't met many of them in person, but I hadn't even been on calls with most of them. But I was like, oh, that's okay. I don't need to be on camera, because it was just a casual get together. Except I got asked a question where I felt like I needed to be on camera. And I also recognized that as one of the more senior folks on the litigation team, I needed to be okay and let other people know it was okay to have those kid things come in. And so I get on this call, my hands are literally covered in paper mache. And I'm like, I have paper mache in my hands. I was helping A1, which most of T-Mobile folks know my daughter. And it was great that we're doing art. I hate paper mache. And then I went on with whatever the answer was, because I needed to let the people who also have young kids at home know that that's okay, that the kids are interrupting or they need things. And I hope that continues. I hope that human aspect of things and the grace in dealing with that across the board continues as well. And that we recognize that even with those things going on, people can be extraordinarily successful in balancing those things, and it shouldn't be seen as a hindrance. I will say the sheer number of technologies that are out there and the rapid adoption of those, in some cases without enterprise licenses. You've got employees that are at home and they're just trying to do their job. These are not employees who are trying to do something nefarious. They're really just trying to get their job done, and they can't run down to the IT office and say, what tool do I use? So they're going out on their own to grab things. And that makes it challenging because a lot of them don't have the right security. If they've got a personal Dropbox account, for example, we may not be able to access that for data. And companies now have to be very diligent and very fast at adopting technology that hits all of those important factors, right? Privacy, security, discovery, and things. It's really important to create those cross-functional teams. I always used to call it that IT spouse, the person in IT who would tell me those things. And I think that's one of the challenges in the virtual world that we're in right now with the pandemic, because it used to be you'd go to a meeting in person sometimes, and it was those few minutes as you were walking into the meeting or walking out with somebody and you were just catching up, and they would say something, oh, I'm working on the Slack implementation, or hey, we just moved up to E5 licenses. And so you need to be more conscious about creating those opportunities to have those conversations. I recognized that I needed to have a call with our IT team that supports all of those collaboration tools. It started as a quarterly meeting and now it's a monthly meeting. And sometimes it's 10 minutes and sometimes it's an hour. But it's just that opportunity to check in so that we're not surprised in a year when the DOJ comes and asks us for something and we're suddenly like, oh yeah, all that data is on this new collaboration tool. And I'm like, whoa, wait, I don't know how to get data out of there. So trying to minimize that surprise is definitely a huge focus of my team right now. I think it's about trying to explain that the technology is not replacing the lawyers, it's freeing them up to do the more interesting work. And that may be in the data. I mean, I always talk about the database being my happy place because I don't get to be there very often. But when I get to be up until 2 a.m. trying to run searches or figure out how we're going to do a review process or whatever, that is my happy place. So it's not so much that free yourself up for brief writing, because that's not what everybody likes to do, but you get to do the more interesting parts, whether that's the technology side or the other parts of being a lawyer. Trying to get people to understand that piece of it is really important and may drive them to be excited about it, as opposed to feeling like, oh, well, if I accept AI, then that's going to replace all of the reviewers that we have. And that's just not true. It's just going to be better work quality. As we talked about, the number of tools that the business is using is increasing daily. And I need somebody who, yes, they know how to do email collections or review of emails. That's great. But I also need somebody who can think outside the box and be creative about the solution. So it's less about those practical skills and more about that, because the technology is constantly changing these days. You can provide a lot of help in making people feel comfortable asking those questions, or making them feel that this is where we need to go with this and you need to think outside the box. But a lot of times I think that's an individual's personality coming through there. The idea was to be a partner, and whether that was a small firm or a big firm or to go in-house somewhere. Now, the tech partners and tech companies have realized that there's so many great opportunities to use the skills that we learn in law school in that tech environment and building out the legal technology, and to have people who understand the decisions we make, even in processing, can have such a downstream impact in review and what we produce. And unless you understand the end goal that, oh, these are going to be used in deposition and what does a depositions look like, and that's helped. It's given people who are excited about this space an opportunity to find roles and careers that might not fit that typical lawyer mold that existed 50, 60 years ago, probably even 10, 15 years ago. That's allowed them to come into their own.
Ellen Blanchard, everybody, on the virtual lunch. Thank you so much. Thanks to our friends at Integrion for supporting this series on meaningful metrics. Thanks for doing this. I appreciate it so much.